Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at building some EVO Design furniture. We're going to be looking at the EVO 4.4S. This particular furniture has been spec'd for this build that we're doing behind us, and we're going to show you assembling all the furniture and getting that all built, trial fitted in the van, and then if we need to make any adjustments, back out, make the adjustments, and then a final fit. So we'll start with all the boring stuff first, which is going to be the knock-on edge trim, and we'll get all those panels out that need trimming, put the knock-on edge trim all the way around, and then we can start assembling the rear wardrobe and move forward into the front section, and we'll hope to show you all of that. Let's get cracking with that now. Okay, so we've now got some parts out on the bench here. We've got a table that we're going to do, and we're going to do some other bits that need trimming up. You'll have in your kit your knock-on edge trim, which is depending on what colour you buy, depending on which colour you get a whole roll of that, plenty to do enough in the kit that you need to do. You just want to open that up. You may find that it's a little bit cold, and in the winter, certainly if you're doing it in the winter, you'll need to just warm this up gently with a hairdryer, or if you've got one, a heat gun, and that will help you just manipulate it into the corners and make sure it sits nicely back into any recesses that you're trimming up. Make sure you get yourself a nice sharp blade in your knife, and ideally a pair of snips is what we use, just to cut it to the size we need. We'll start with the table. This is probably doing round the outside edge is probably going to be one of your easiest things to do. So we'll start with the table first, and we like to put the lip, any lip that you have, this edge trim will have a lip on one side, not on the other, and we like to put that lip on the top of whatever we're doing. So really you want that on the top all the way around. With a table, doesn't really matter because they can go either way up, and it just depends on how you fit your final leg pieces and your rail pieces on the end. I always start from the middle at the back, and we'll knock it on all the way round. Use a rubber mallet so it doesn't mark the edge trim, and if it does you can just rub it off. Start in the middle, right at the back, get that lined up where your middle is, and then just knock that on all the way round. Like so. When you get to the corners, you can trim a little bit out of them. If you've got a real sharp corner, these aren't too bad, but if you've got a real sharp corner, mind your fingers. You just want to trim that up and just take out a bit of the inside of the knock-on trim. And you'll find that that just makes it go around those corners real nice and smooth. Doesn't push it off at all, doesn't bunch up. Like that, and then straight across the top. Like so. And we're going to trim up all these panels like that. All the panels that need trimming in your kit, trim it up. One little tip is to, on your film, your protective film that comes on all your wood paneling, just peel it back a little bit, certainly on the side that's got the lip. Otherwise it can catch underneath it and you can end up spending ages trying to pick it all out. So if you just peel that back slightly all the way round, and then what you can do is just literally peel off about 10 mil right the way round, and it will just stop it catching when you're knocking on that edge trim. Right, we'll do the same again on this bit. We'll just take a little bit out of that. All of this sort of information is in the instructions anyway, so if you do get stuck, be sure to check out EVO's instructions, and if not, take a look on their website, or if you get really stuck, just give them a ring. But everything you need to know is on those instructions. Once you come to the final bit, you just need to cut that where you want to cut it with the joint on the outside ones. You don't need to leave a lot of excess, so just cut it pretty much where it is. If you leave too much excess, you'll find that it pushes all the trim off on the corners over a period of time. So on an outside one, when you're trimming an outside edge, just cut it as it needs to be. On an inside edge, you need to leave a bit of excess. Just tidy up this tiny little bit here, and then you'll see that is all trimmed all the way around. We can just peel this film back and off when we need to, so when the van's ready to go out, we're just going to be peeling that straight off there. This side will come off easy because it hasn't got the lip on it, and that's all trimmed up all the way around, that edge in there, and the joint is at the back, so nobody's really going to see the joint. That's going to be up against the table, up against the furniture, sorry. And yeah, so that's how you do an outside one. Now let's take a look at an inside one, and we can see what it's like to trim an inside edge. So we'll just move this out the way a minute. We'll get one like this one, which is an inside edge. So on this one, we're going to trim on the inside, and again, we're going to put the finishing lip on the side that we're going to see. So this one's actually going to go upright like that, and that's going to be just shutting off from these other lockers on this side. So our finishing edge is going to be on this side, and we're going to make sure our lip is on this side. So we'll peel that film back a little bit, all the way around those, and then we'll put our knock-on edge trim around that section. We've peeled all that back, and now let's get our knock-on edge around in those inside bits. When you do this, you want to leave enough room to have extra, so you want to knock it on all the way around, and then what we want to do is leave about 10mm overlap when it comes to the end of it. We're going to cut that off, knock it in, and what that's going to do is that will put pressure on it. So as this shrinks in the winter, it won't actually separate and you see gaps in it. You'll see some people have trimmed it up to the exact correct size, and then as soon as it cools down or anything like that, it starts moving apart and you'll get little gaps where it should be. Now, you can't always help that, but if you can leave an overlap and knock it in, sort of force it in, then obviously it will keep it all into these corners as well. Stop it bulging out on the corners and that, which would be great. So let's start this one, and we'll start knocking this one on. You can use the hammer handle to just knock it in on the inside. That helps you out on the getting into these corners, because sometimes your hammer's going to be a bit too big to get into those. So just use your hammer handle, knock that in. And when it comes down to the final bit here, we want to run that over. So we want to leave that about 10mm, between 5 and 10mm over that lip. So it gives us enough pressure to push the edge trim back in to allow for any temperature changes. If anything heats up or shrinks, you know, when it cools down. So we're going to leave that over. And then we're going to knock that into where it needs to be. I'm just going to take off that lip there, just make it sit nice. Straighten that up. I'm going to get that in. At first you might think it's not going to go, but it will go, and that'll put pressure all the way round, stop you getting any of the gaps appearing when it cools down. So that is the inside edge trimmed up. That's that one all trimmed on the inside, right the way around there. So that's the inside and outside. What we're going to do now is going to carry on. We've got to trim up the rest of it. Probably going to take me a good, I don't know, 3 hours or so to trim the rest of them up. So we'll crack on with that now. Get all the edge trims on, which is the horrible bit, and then we can start assembling the rear wardrobe and move on to the front section before we trial fit in the van. And then we can see what fits, and if it doesn't actually fit in certain places, we can take it back out, we can make the modifications that we need to, and then do our final fit and get all the electrical in and fit the van out. All right, so we're on to the next step now. We have trimmed up most of our furniture, so we've trimmed up a lot of the panels, the tables, some of the doors and other bits. We've trimmed some of the bigger panels as well, some of the recesses and some of the recesses in these full size panels. And on these ones we trim the insides all the way round, but we leave the outsides until we've constructed the furniture. You can do it by trimming, putting your edge trim on all the furniture and then constructing it. We like to do it this way because once we put that together, we put the other side in, and then we can do a nice trim over the top of all of it, the two panels, the joint of the two panels together, and that. We find it creates a bit of a nicer finish. I'll be honest, we haven't trimmed up everything because we want to move on now to constructing this rear wardrobe. And those doors and some of the other parts, they can be done at a later date. It's things like the light shelf, LED light shelf, and the rear overhead locker. When we come to build those, we can do our edge trimming on that. So we're going to move on to constructing this rear locker. The next step of this is going to be to grab your dowel inserts. You're going to need the white dowel inserts, all come in the kit. And we're going to want to populate these panels. Anywhere that you're going to have a furniture block or a hinge, we want to populate these panels. So we put those in, tap them in with a hammer, and just make sure they're nice and flush, and then put all your furniture blocks on all the way round. We'll get going with that, and then we're going to put our tambour door runners on, and then we'll come back to it when we move on to the next step. So I'll start knocking all these in now, and we'll come back in 2 minutes. Well, we're at the point now where we've installed all of our dowel inserts into the panels that we're going to be needing to build the rear wardrobe. And you're going to need to now install some of the furniture blocks. So you need your 15mm screws and your grey furniture blocks. And I use a screwdriver gun, makes it a lot quicker. If you haven't got one, you can do it by hand. But setting number 1 on the torque settings and run the screws in seems to be the perfect tension for what we need. Now we're going to use all these ones. We're going to use some 15mm screws here and the furniture blocks. Just double check that you've got 15mm screws and you don't pick up a 16 or a 19 by mistake. You will run through the actual material if you do that. So what we're going to do on this one is I'm going to find my top and bottom shelf, and then I'm going to install the grey furniture blocks to that, so we can slide these panels in later. Here is our top and bottom. And this is the bottom of the shelf here, and I know that the tambour runners are going to run this way. You're going to have your tambour corners on this front edge, and then we're going to have these blocks set in here to hold on to the panels that are coming in, and our tambour runners are going to run along and out through that way. We're going to install our tambour runners. We're going to get our 2 tambour door corners, and they fit perfectly where the pre-drilled holes are. I'm going to run those in, a couple of 15mm screws, and just hold those into place where they need to be. and do the same on this side, and that's that one running where it needs to be. Now we're going to get our tambour door track, which comes in lengths like so, and we want to cut this down. You want to cut it wisely because you don't want to end up with chopping all three of these and then finding that you're short on one run. So use the first one, cut it, mark it the back of the board where it needs to be, and then you're going to chop that one, and then we'll probably have a look at, to make sure we use it correctly, we'll have a look for a short length that we're going to cut on that. So we're going to mark that there. Okay, go cut that hacksaw, and then we'll come back to it. Okay, I've cut my first tambour strip. So this is the first one. This is the tambour runner, and what we're going to do is just install that there onto where we need to go. There's a little marking which shows you where the middle is anyway, and we can hold that in place with a couple of 15mm screws, and we're going to just install that into there just for the time being so we can take a look like that. And we're going to install another one here, just hold that in place. Later on we'll put some screws into position to use them as stops, so when the tambour doors come back they don't go too far back and they stop where they need to be. I think that's it for this part one, and I'm going to have to move this on to a couple of different videos because otherwise the video is going to be way too long. So this is part one. Join us in part two and we'll carry on building this rear locker, and there may be a part three which will be the front section, and we'll go from that. So we'll see you next time.